Hello and welcome. Another edition of our Thursday Coach's Corner, sponsored by Corvive. Corvive supplements, all NSF certified. I encourage you, if you're a student athlete, parents of student athletes, you should really do a deep dive into the NSF process and why that matters when it comes to supplements that your student athlete might be taking, whether it be in high school or potentially in college. Today, we're going to be talking Division One. We're going to be talking Mid-American Conference. I feel one of the strongest up and coming programs in the country, regardless of level or division. We're talking NIU, boom, with Northern Illinois University. We think around these parts, we think quarterbacks up here in the Northeast, but we're going to be talking baseball. Head coach Ryan Copeland. Ryan, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Very, very welcome. Now, you took over the program in June of 23. It's safe to say there's been a strong turnaround, especially over the last 2 years. We're into 21 win seasons. And I'd love to talk to you a little bit about when you took over the program, what were some of the initial changes that you implemented, you and your staff, that kind of turned the ship around?
Well, we inherited a program that had won 10 games the year before, and we returned a lot of those guys. And we knew we weren't going to be able to overhaul the roster. We knew we were going to inherit, I think it was 28 guys. So we are going to have a roster of 40. So we could bring in 12 of our own. But it's June, July, so you're trying to find some pieces there super late in the process. But we just knew we had to instill more expectations within our program, find a way to elevate the standards from within. And we knew year one was kind of the free year. Whatever happened. But it's a big year in the sense that you are creating your environment. You're trying to set the standard that you want your players to abide by. And I think we did some good things. We doubled our win total. Overall, we nearly tripled it in conference, and the MAC is probably as strong as it's ever been. So we were able to accomplish a lot, but I come from a place where we were averaging over 40 wins per game, and super regionals and World Series at the Division II level. So it was definitely an adjustment for myself and our coaching staff to find a way to continue to coach our guys up, coach them hard, but make sure they knew we had their backs, and try to walk both lines of it is about the future, but it's also not fair to only think about the future. And we owed it to our guys to find a way to compete every series, every weekend. So just trying to set the standards for the program and try to build some good things in year one.
One of the things I think a lot of parents, student athletes want to ask college coaches, and that is, what are some of the things that families and athletes overlook when it comes to how coaches are evaluating potential student athletes, particularly from the high school ranks? Obviously the exit velocity, the arm strength, and all that 60-yard dash. But what are some of the hidden pieces to evaluations from your perspective as a head coach at NIU with regard to the high school athlete? What can they kind of work on that may be something over and above the conventional metrics?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think my answer is going to be one of it's circular. Performers. We need guys that are at the high school level that perform, and they outperform everybody. They're the best player on the field. And I think the game of baseball from top to bottom, probably as talented as it's ever been. I don't know that the game is as good as it's ever been, but you might agree with me there. But the amount of kids throwing fastballs 90 miles an hour, the amount of kids that can get off on a TrackMan unit, a HitTrax machine, and go pop 105 off the bat, I've never seen anything like it. But oftentimes they get to this level, and it is such a different level. It's a huge jump, and they really struggle. So if we're going to go make a pretty substantial offer to a high school kid, they have to be the best player on the field. They have to perform. And when I say perform, for example, it doesn't mean you're hitting 300 in the three hole for your high school. I mean, you're hitting 400 plus, 450, you're slugging, you don't strike out. And I think in a way that's gotten lost because the kids are talented, and they do get in the cages and they do work. But you got to be the best player in the field for us if we're going to make you a big offer out of high school.
So, one of the topics that I often have with families is the ability to execute under extreme, I don't like to use the word pressure, but extreme situations, game situations, And I would love for you to discuss that is more than physical. It's also mental, meaning, you struck out 3 times, but here you come in the bottom of the 8th and your team's down a run. And all you need to do is put a ball in play to drive in that tying run or potentially a winning run. You talk a little bit about the mental component to execution at your level of college athletics and why that matters a great deal for the development, at those teenage years leading into their years as maybe upperclassmen at the college level.
Yeah, the irony of moving from, youth travel ball to high school to college, and, college to professional, and eventually to the big league level is the better you get, the more you fail. And
Right.
kids don't
Boom.
fail a lot in high school. If they're good, they don't. And they get to this level, and it doesn't matter if you're at a Power Four, SEC, ACC, Missouri Valley, the MAC. You're going to struggle. The game is a lot different. You have an entire roster of everybody's best players. You throw in some Power Four kickbacks, and the game gets fast, quick. And so, yeah, we have to have good systems in place to make our kids understand the bigger picture. They go through that a lot in the fall when they first get here, and there's a lot of growing pains for sure. So you're always trying to find a way to get to know your guys better, make them understand the failure components of this game, and then really trying to rely on your relationship with them to help them coach them through that, and just to make sure that they're keeping a good head on their shoulders and they can keep perspective, because the season's long. There's going to be ups and downs, and I think in my past 2 years, maybe I allowed our group to get a little too high and a little too low sometimes. And that's a big adjustment we've made with our guys. And I think they've done such a great job of understanding the bigger picture, keeping a good head, whether we've had success or failures, and that comes from the coaching staff. So it's a really tough game. There's a lot of challenges, and the better we can prepare our guys for failure, the better off they're going to be.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what makes the campus at Northern Illinois so special from a student perspective, not just a baseball athlete, but just from a student perspective, as far as campus, community, the culture on the campus, things like that? For people that may be on the West Coast or the Northeast, we know, Northern Illinois through Jimmy Garofalo, and we see all the NIU, shots and campus shots. But in your mind, what makes NIU such an attractive opportunity for a potential college athlete?
Well, first is probably the fact that it is a college town. The city of DeKalb, Sycamore, the surrounding areas, they thrive off the university. It's the number one employer, as most places are when you're in a small college town. But I think the location itself is a huge advantage for us. We're about 40 miles from downtown Chicago, without traffic, which is a big asterisk. Without traffic, you can get to anywhere downtown within an hour. You have the suburbs right down the road, St. Charles, Geneva, Naperville area. And we're unique in the sense that in the MAC we're the only one in the central time zone. Now we're going to make that shift to the horizon next year, but we're always going east. But it's a beautiful campus. It really is. And I think if you look at smaller state schools, especially the Midwest, the state of Illinois, there was a time when we were struggling with enrollment. I think at one time in the early 2000s, Northern Illinois had about 28,000 students, and we're all the way down to about 17,000. But we're headed back up. We hit a low point about 5 to 10 years ago, and enrollment's climbing back up. But it's a unique spot. We have BCS football, and when we make that jump to the Horizon League, you're going to be the only program in the league that has BCS football. You're playing in the Mountain West, and you have marquee matchups and pretty substantial TV deals. So, every place has its challenges, but I think we try to focus on what we do have, and we have a beautiful campus. We have a great campus life, and I think the things we're trying to implement keep getting better and better with regards to facilities and resources.
As far as camps are concerned, obviously all schools for the most part have summer and fall camps. Do you prioritize that with regard to wanting your entire staff to see a potential student athlete? Do you encourage those high school athletes that may have a strong interest in Northern Illinois to maybe participate in a camp? And if so, what particular camp would you prefer your high school athletes to attend? The summer, fall?
Yeah, so when we first got here, I think our goal was to have 2 showcase camps per year, and there's just 3 of us. Coach Kelch, my associate head coach, and Coach Peacock, my pitching coach. So it was a challenge to try to accomplish that and do it the right way. Where we're all there, we're engaging with potential student athletes that are on our campus for the first time. So we settled on doing a big indoor winter camp every single December. We do it right around Christmas time. Kids are out of school. Parents typically aren't working as much or at all. So we do it on a Saturday, sometime around the holidays. And each of the last 2 years, we've had over 120 kids there. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, I think camps are interesting because I think there's a lot of really good programs that use them as an advantage to try to get kids on their campus, especially if they're technically not recruitable at the time, right? At 2028 to 2029, get to interact with them a little bit, get to know them a little bit before you make that first phone call to them on August 1st of their junior year. So yeah, we've signed, I'd say, multiple kids from every single camp we've ever had. Going back to my days at Illinois Springfield. So with the recruiting calendar the way it is, we're basically shut down from October until March. It's a huge advantage to get quality players at our camps, and whether they come as a freshman, a sophomore, or a junior, people getting on our campus is a good thing. And we try to really attack the Chicago area, Wisconsin, Iowa, Missouri, Indiana. It's just so dang competitive here with all the Division I schools, running camps at the same time. So you got to be creative with it, but it's a huge part of what we do in the recruiting process.
We're going through a very fluid time period with regard to Division I athletics, and the potential talk of the 5th year, 5 and 5. How do you feel that will affect college athletics? Do you think that's beneficial for the high school athlete in your recruiting? Do you think that that's going to create an older model at the college level, if it can be any older? I mean, it's average age right now is 22, but what are your thoughts on the 5 years of eligibility in 5 years?
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I think it's a good idea in theory, but I think everything that has been implemented in college athletics was always a good idea in theory. And I don't know that some of the stuff going on is good anymore. At one point, when I was playing, I went to Illinois State. I was there 07 to 10, and it was just 4 and 5, right? You had your 4 years of competition. You got the extra year for a red shirt or just a hardship one. You're going to red shirt your freshman year, and just because you weren't ready to help the team win. And then it turned into, we hit COVID. It really complicates everything. And now you look up and there's 25-year-olds playing quarterback in the SEC, and you got freshmen pitchers from small towns in the state of Illinois, going on a guarantee series to the SEC, trying to get out a 25-year-old who's on his 5th school. It's really complicated everything. I guess my thought is, if we pass the 5 and 5, I'm all for it. It's just going to turn into more lawsuits, and it's going to end up being, 6 and 6. Student athletes have a lot of power now, and mostly rightfully so. We all started with the Johnny Manziel and the football helmet, and being able to capitalize off of your name, image, likeness, and here we are. And on any Power 4 roster, most of the players are making a whole lot more money than the coaching staff. So it's well deserved, but I don't think it's what was intended out of these discussions. So yeah, I'm all for the 5 and 5. I got a true 4-year guys I would love back. But if they don't grandfather it in and the current seniors end up getting hosed and the current juniors get their 5th year, what's to stop the true seniors that are supposed to graduate in 2026 from filing lawsuits and winning?
Right.
So it's just, I wish we could just settle and just be okay with things for a few years, because I think most coaches would tell you we don't really know anything. It's all day to day, and we sit in our compliance meetings monthly, and new rule after new rule, a new proposal after new proposal. So, yeah, I try to stay out of it as much as I can and just try to coach our guys.
Well, that's refreshing to hear. And I know that parents always want to hear it directly from coaches rather than just an old dinosaur like me. But I agree with everything you just said. I do want to touch on a point. You know, if we look at last year's regionals, super regionals, and even World Series, I really think the term mid-major, that line is blurry now. You know, I hate to call Coastal Carolina a mid-major, but if we start going into Arkansas, Little Rock, Murray State, and Kent State, and we start throwing these schools around that, you know, even Wright State last year, are we going to see now with the playing field and the fallbacks and, you know, the portal, do you think we'll start to see, you know, maybe a Cinderella story more often in baseball at the Division I level? You know, do you think that's going to start to create not parity, but a kind of an equal playing field, all things considered, over and above the name, image, and likeness? But talking about athletes kind of being spread out for playing time purposes, do you think we'll start to see more of these quote unquote Cinderella stories year after year?
Yeah, I think so. And the first off, when you look at the teams that have made those runs, you know, you look at Murray State last year, Evansville a couple of years ago, and you know, we can lump Coastal into that, but I think Coastal's pretty well off in terms
Right.
of scholarships and NIL and rev share. But they have outstanding coaching staffs. Right? They win with people. Just, you know, Coach Skirka and the job he did last year. Anybody that knows, you know, him and Coach Atkins and that staff, that wasn't a surprise. And I always said when we shifted to the rev share model a couple of years ago, you know, that the power forwards are going to do what they're going to do. They've always had the money. They probably have more of it now, but it's all relative, right? They're trying to out recruit against each other on the same playing field in the SEC, the ACC, right? Where I thought the biggest jump would happen is from the mid majors, you know, talking Sun Belt, Missouri Valley,
Right.
MAC, the schools that have had success and they have an athletic department and administration that decide to go all in. You know, in our league, you know, Ball State, Kent State, some schools with a lot of rich history, you know, the ones that we're trying to catch up to, those were the ones that, you know, NIL and rev share and all things portal were going to benefit the most. And yeah, I think another one with Troy, right?
Right.
That Coach Meade has done and Coach Wolgamott and those guys. Those are the programs that were going to benefit the most and really bridge that gap between themselves and the rest of the Power Four. So, yeah, you're going to keep seeing it every single June 3rd, 4th, 5th, whenever that portal opens up. It's free agency, and you know, your relationships do matter, but there's a lot of money being thrown around, and kids are going to follow the money, and I don't blame them, unfortunately.
So high school athletes watching this and they say, I really like what Coach Copeland is saying. I love everything about Northern Illinois. How do you as a staff like to be contacted? Is it an email, a personalized email, rather than an email bomb, blanket bomb situation? Do you like the direct messages on social media? How do you prefer to have athletes contact and reach out to get on your radar?
You know, email is the easy answer. I'll be honest, you know, we're in season. You know, we played on Tuesday night, got back at midnight from downtown Chicago. You know, we practiced yesterday. I'm by myself. Both of our assistants were out recruiting. We'll have a light one today. We play Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So getting to check your email, getting the time to respond when you're doing all those other things is tough. So this might be unpopular. I actually don't mind when I get a random text message and it says, this is so-and-so from this high school. You know, it makes you wonder how they get your number, but
Right.
they're showing initiative, and like it's like, hey, I'm just gonna go text Coach Copeland or text Coach Kelch, and like for me, I would much rather respond to a text message than an email. It's way more personal. We all have our phones in our hands nearly 24/7, besides when we're sleeping. So for me, rather than getting into my Outlook, right, it's a lot easier for me just to, okay, like let me look up this kid and see if he's all right, see if it might be an okay fit or somebody to have a conversation with. So, yeah, email's safe, but I don't mind when I get a text message or a direct call. It means the kid's taking initiative, and he's probably pretty confident that, you know, we're going to get on the phone and have a pretty decent phone call.
So I am going to slip this question is because I really want to get your feedback on this. Right now, there's a huge debate. Parents, we're talking about late bloomers, those athletes that kind of hit their stride physically, skill set wise, their senior year in high school. Do you think that there's a place in college baseball, particularly at a school such as Northern Illinois, for that late bloomer that may just come out of nowhere in the senior year and just kind of get in the discussion point of, okay, this guy has some upside. Do you have rolling admissions, or how does a late bloomer in this spring of 2026 possibly find their way to an NIU type program? Is there room for athletes like that?
Yeah, I would say in year one at NIU, we were pretty aggressive early, thinking let's go be first. Let's go find a way to get a high school kid on the phone on August 1st. Let's get him on campus, within the next 4 weeks, and then let's go get him an offer and try to be the first one. And we felt like at times the only way we were going to beat out some of the competition and recruiting that we have in the Midwest and really all over the country now, because the Southern schools have shown they'll come up here. They know how good the Chicago area is with talent, that we had to be first. Well, the problem is you are taking some chances. And now, our roster in my 3 years has gone from 40 to 34 or to 36 now to 34. So starting August 1st, we got to be at 34, which was what the House settlement required originally. Now there's going to be some schools that stick around at 40 to 45. They're taking advantage of, the
DSA, yeah.
DSA, designated student athlete. So we've kind of tried to stay balanced with that. We'll be at the future games like every other 306 Division I schools, and we'll love the kids we love, and we'll call them, and usually we get them on campus. But like I said earlier, there's a lot of competition, and there's a lot of money being thrown around, and we got a little bit, but probably not as much as some other schools. We actually just committed a kid who was dropped by another Division I school. We liked him last summer. It was okay. It was a little light. And then I'm sitting at a junior college game with another Division I coach, and he says, "Hey, have you seen so-and-so?" And I can't comment on the name, of course. He's not signed yet. But I said, last summer, he's like, "Hey, he made a jump. You need to go see it." So, looking out for us, I go see it a couple Mondays ago, and every fastball in the first inning was 92, 93. And last summer, it was 85, 86. So, because we had a roster spot available, because we kind of planned for some guys like that, we have some money available, we end up getting a premium high school arm that we probably shouldn't have gotten, solely because we had the spot for it and we had the money for him as well. So who knows what happens, down the road, and but hopefully we have him for a couple of years, and he helps us win a whole bunch of games and moves on to the next level. But late bloomers are a thing. Diamonds in the rough, not so much. We know everybody, and it's very, very rare to find somebody like that. But we do have a kid coming in named Caleb Cox from Springfield Lutheran. I was in Springfield for 8 years. Pops he played in AAA out of SIUE, 5th round pick. Used to rent the field from us at UIS, so knew him a little bit. The kid is at the Super 60, one of the most live fastballs probably in the entire country, and that's probably about as close of a thing as you can get to a diamond in the rough now. But they're hard to find, but we definitely try to take advantage of the late bloomers. They're still out there.
Well, I know that parents love to hear that, and I want to sneak this real quick. You're out of conference play going forward. Is that some parents are always asking me, how do schools schedule out, 3 and 4 years? But I know as your program begins to rise and we're all concerned with RPI and all this great stuff, strength of schedule for parents. What is your out of conference schedule look, going forward, like in 2027 and beyond? What types of schools are you going to be traveling to, or tournaments that you might be scheduling in that month of February into March?
Yeah, a little bit of both, right? I think every year I try to schedule a pretty cool one, like just a cool place, right? Like, look, you got to remind yourself we are all just fans of the game at one point, And my first year, I get a call from Jay Johnson. And we were supposed to go play somewhere else, and he's like, "Hey, you're playing, Northwestern State." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Why don't you just come to our place and just play them there, and we'll give you a whole bunch of money." Well, okay. Well, I grew up watching LSU, Alex Box Stadium. I mean, as long as I can remember. And so I'm like, heck yeah, we're going to go. And it might not end how we want it to, but we're going to go compete and have a blast. And but you also don't want to get buried. You don't want to
Right.
get buried to start the year because you have to take guarantee series. So we try to stay balanced. Like, for example, next year, we'll open up in Tennessee.
Oh,
Yeah, super talented. Know their top assistant, Coach Kivett, pretty well. So we'll go to Tennessee, go play 3 games over there, go compete our tails off. We'll go to Southern Indiana, go play them in Evansville, for 3 or 4 games. Then we go to Murray State. So, they'll obviously be talented. They'll be 2 years removed from their run to Omaha. I guess they could do it again, 1 year removed possibly. And then we'll finish up at SLU. And we got a whole bunch of family in the St. Louis area. So that's kind of a selfish one, to be around family. Ashlyn, she's got a whole bunch of family down there. So, yeah, it's funny. You can kind of manipulate your schedule, and sometimes there's some personal decisions in there. But, yeah, we want a balanced schedule. We want some tough ones. We do got to take some guarantee series here and there to help with the budget. But, again, you don't want to get out of your 4 or 5 weeks of non-con buried because confidence matters. And you see what happens to teams when they start the conference play and they've got 2 or 3 wins. They haven't won a series yet. It's tough to come back from that.
Well, I want to say thank you because I know we're in season. I truly appreciate you taking the time to join me today. It was really great to be able to speak with you live. I want parents to understand, NIU, currently all college programs, within, let's call it the new mid-major world, are going to be competing not only for regionals and super regionals, but as we've seen last 2 years, to get to Omaha as well. And NIU is definitely in that mix. Coach Copeland, thank you so much for taking the time. Best of luck the rest of the season.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Athletes, electrolytes matter, but you got to choose the right electrolytes. If you look at the sugars, 34 grams, the dyes, all the things that's not good for you in this product, this is a hype product. If you look here at the electrolytes made by Corvive, it's got the right amount of magnesium, sodium, potassium, zinc, kosher salt. It's got vitamin C to help with the immune system. I'm telling you, if you want to stay on the field, you want to perform at your best, you want to recover well, this is the product that you need to choose to fuel